there's one big question that seems to be cycling around the Star Wars Galaxy of Heroes community, and I can fully understand why. The raids. That's right, we usually get a raid at this point anywhere between every 9 months to a year. And right now we are on the cusp, the brink, the knife's edge of thinking we should be getting a new raid. Any minute now, any day. But where is it? What's it going to be, and do you need to be worried? Should you be hoarding your resources, or should be spending everything that you've got with wanton abandon? It's not very often you get to throw wanton abandon into a sentence, but I just did it. So, yeah, time to step up your vocab game, tribe. Let's talk all things raid, not Shadow Legends. The current raid, ladies and gentlemen, is, of course, the Order 66 raid. We had this last year around about, not this time per se, but the announcements and the rollout was kind of this time last year. Order 66 raid, it was a controversial raid when it released because they only announced half the flipping teams that we could even use with it. Think about it. The only teams that were available for this raid, if you were not a pay-to-play player, if you were just sort of casually farming and not endgame, so you didn't have that big crystal hoard in your back pocket to throw on things like the new Bad Batch and then into the Dark Side clones, the things that you were left with were essentially Galactic Republic Jedi and maybe a smattering of pirates that could hardly do anything. Granted, Nest could solo the bottom tier and OG Hondo could solo the bottom tier. Now, it's changed a little bit over time because we've had Relic Delta come into the play, and that has helped elevate units to perform better in a solo capacity, essentially. So that being said, it kind of drives the purpose of this conversation that I want to have with you today. The raid system. Are we going to get a new raid, and is it going to require, at this point in time, the characters that we are currently farming for the era of Andor? I'm going to put forward my hypothesis. We're going with the big words today. I'm going to put forward my hypothesis, my thesis, hypothesis. Hypoglycemia. My brother is diabetic. On why I don't think that's going to be the case. Okay. Now you can disagree with me, and I'd love to hear your arguments in the comments section down below, but I think personally that it's pretty clear cut. And in order for me to establish why I think that, we're going to have to go into the far past, into days of yore where I still didn't have hair because it was only a year ago. We're going to check back and see the historic evidence that we can use to reinforce my position. Okay. So, what do we know? Right now, CG has tried to establish that roughly every year we are going to get a new raid. Does that necessarily mean every new year we will get a raid? No, of course not. Things change, time change, people change. Okay, Samantha, I've moved on. Anyway, yes, sometimes things don't always go to plan. All right, and I think currently we are in that phase of things maybe have not gone quite to plan for CG, or maybe they have. Maybe they have gone to plan, and that's why it's going a little bit later. Option A for me is I see the big shift coming in May. In May, we obviously have the National Star Wars Day, May the 4th. Everybody loves May the 4th, and May the 4th be with you. During the month of May, we are going to be having the first cinematic release of a brand new Star Wars film since 2019. Rise of Skywalker was... Can you imagine? It's been 6 years, 7 years nearly, 6.5 basically, years since we've had a Star Wars film in cinemas as a new release. I'm not talking about, obviously the re-cinematic releases that we've had of previous Star Wars films. I'm talking about big blockbuster moment, brand new Star Wars film. Mandalorian and Grogu is releasing, I think it's on May 22nd, which is obviously the month of May. Around the anniversary of Star Wars, or Star Wars Day rather, not necessarily the anniversary of Star Wars, that would be the opportune moment in my mind for CG to make a directional shift towards two things. First and foremost, I think we will most likely be getting a Galactic Legend Mandalorian of sorts, if that is actual Din Djarin. If it's Din Djarin and Grogu, I don't know what it's going to be exactly. I feel that is a safe bet, safe money. CG is going to tie into those releases, and I can already see the counter arguments flowing in. If I guarantee you there are going to be people in the comments section that saying, yeah, but Scribe, when CG release new things from films, it takes them a year. And I'd say you're absolutely almost always right. Yes, almost always. However, counter argument, this won't actually be dropping with the film. It won't be dropping a year later. It will be an error-based system. So the content can start coming in the next era that we see after the era of Andor. We are currently in week 5 of the era of the Andor. We're coming up to the halfway point. We're in episode 2. We are still in the first week. We are getting our Sinta Kaz shards. So once this sort of ends, we will kind of be at the halfway point for the era, which means we basically have another 7 weeks before the next era drops, or a month and 3/4, if you will. And those of you that are good at math will know that we will actually get a new era dropping basically immediately, May 4th, May 5th. Right with Star Wars Celebration. Star Wars Celebration, Star Wars Anniversary, May the 4th be with you, Revenge of the 5th. That's when we will be getting our next era. Now, I think personally it's going to be a little bit foolish from CG and a little bit confusing from the masters that be at Disney not to try and push everything together. Celebrate a brand new Mandalorian film coming out. Let's get all of our media outlets, all of our merchandising, everything, all singing from the same beautiful hymn sheet. Can you hear me? Ladies and gentlemen of the tribe, we all want to celebrate Mandalorian and Grogu. That's going to be the masters on high. The powers that be are going to be selling it and telling everybody, all of the different marketing arms, this is what you are pushing. You are pushing for releasing stuff related to this particular thing. And I know we didn't do that necessarily for everything. We didn't do it for The Acolyte. We didn't do it for The Mandalorian Season 3. We didn't do it for, most recently, with Andor Season 2. Massive hit, but where was the conjoined sort of push, right? We didn't get any of it, okay? Now we're getting Andor a long time after the release. I get it, but the difference is those were not films. Films are the biggest push for Disney. That's like that is, apart from the fact that they push the films in order to sell the merchandise, it's kind of a cyclical thing. And it goes round and round in an ever spinning communistic wheel. Is it communistic wheel? Commercial wheel. Oh my God, my brain is melting today. Makes sense to me, guys. Makes sense to me. Okay, and they don't necessarily have to release any kit reveal. They don't have to release any images, but I'm pretty confident that we will have some mock-up of, by the way, we're going to finish up with a Mandalorian and Grogu GL, right? We will probably see that come May time, right? Where am I going with this? Essentially, I think that if CG are pushing for a new GL, what do new GLs often tie into? Think about Pirate King Hondo. Think about Leia, right? What did they tie into? They tied into a new raid. Think about Jabba, new raid. Featured factions for the last 4 raids. One was a little bit different. Battle for Naboo. We didn't get a Galactic Legend for that. We got Queen Amidala and the Gungans, right? That was more around the anniversary of the Phantom Menace. So that kind of makes sense. It would make sense to me if we are doing a Mandalorian Grogu push, there is a big tie-in. We get a new Galactic Legend and a new raid to go along with it. Probably related to the film that's coming out, right? So I reckon that's where it's going to be the first big push. The reason why I don't think the Andor units are going to be used for that is because CG hasn't said these are going to be required for a new raid. And I can see, again, I have my future sight. My mind's eye is telling me, but Scribe, CG wouldn't tell us. They want to trick you. They want to steal your money. They want to take everything from you and force panic farming for characters. Doesn't work, guys. Doesn't work. It doesn't benefit CG to dupe us into not farming their new stuff and then go, surprise, by the way, these are required for the raid. Unlucky you missed them. They don't make money from that. They can't make money from people that have lost the opportunity to spend. Now they can force people to kind of panic farm characters, but that has to happen while people have the chance to wail on it. Sure, they could do it afterwards and try to get us to spend crystals to be less efficient in our farming when they go to shipments, because we know sort of around the week of the 10th of May, these guys will probably be in shipments, and you can spend essentially 80 crystals per shard to get these characters starred up, even though a lot of people will probably have them 4 or 5 stars, because that's a really efficient way of farming now. But they would have told us. They would have told us if those units are going to be required. The Bad Batch, I know they didn't tell us about it, but they told us after they were farmable in free-to-play methods, as well as saying, oh, they were meant to have their own event, but we didn't have time to fit it in, so we have retroactively placed them into the raid, okay? If you look back, and I'll show you some examples in a second. If you look back, when we had Order 66, we knew straight away those characters are required for a raid, all right? Here we have the Era of the Revenge of the Sith, this original post when we actually had the announcement. If we come down here, and we've got, where is it? Okay, Lord Vader raid. Final name to be decided. Relive the harrowing events of Order 66 with Lord Vader alongside his elite division known as Vader's Fist. Storm the Jedi Temple. Players must race against the time to attempt to rescue as many Jedi as possible from the onslaught. We don't have additional information to provide at this point. The new raid will be open to these units. New Bad Batch, Era of the Revenge of the Sith characters. While Lord Vader is the ideal leader for the Dark Side clones, he won't be there, yada, yada, yada. So this was right at the start of the Nightfall era. You know, before it was even farmable, before we could even get the units, before we even knew their kits, they were saying, this is going to be part of the new raid. All right? So, like, that is what they would have said at the start of this era if it was required for the upcoming raid. They're not going to trick us halfway through the era and say, oh, by the way, sorry if you've missed the last 3 marquees. But they're all needed for this new raid. And if we were to look back to when it was announced, we want to keep you up to date with the current raid plans, specifically the Naboo raid and the exciting new one we are developing. So they announced 11 months ago that there was a new raid in place or coming. Yes, a brand new raid is underway. It is currently under early development stages and we don't have a release date to share just yet. What we can say is the new raid will not come before June and the Naboo raid will continue to be our featured raid until this one arrives. Okay, so they said early on, you're going to get one in like June period, right? This is, think about 11 months ago is going to be what, like February? Something like that. And then when they actually announced more information about the raid and we got a little bit more to chew on, it's time to defend the Jedi Temple. This is 8 months ago now. Order 66, yada, yada, yada. Showed all the allowed characters, showed all the Bad Batch, showed all the Dark Side Troopers, Jedi Master Mace Windu, Barriss Offee, all of that good business. And then it says, how long will this raid live for roughly? I want to make sure my investment is worth it. This is very subject to change, but currently we are eyeing about a year before the next raid. So we are coming up to the point where it's like 9 months, right? We're getting to the about a year before the next raid. But they said right there, it's subject to change. It can fluctuate. It can go up. It can go down. If it was going to launch in May, we would already know by now. They would have told us, all right? I think at best, come May, we are going to see some sort of announcement to do with Mandalorian and Grogu, to do with the future and a potential raid. And I promise you, they will say right then and there, these characters are going to be required for the raid. They might not give us the whole shtick. They won't necessarily give us all of this because we didn't get all of that when the original post was put out. But they will most certainly say if those characters involve era characters from the current era that we're farming. If it does include Andor ones, then sure, fair enough. I was wrong because, you know, you can see they do require Bad Batch, but I firmly believe they added Bad Batch because they missed their event. All right. We'll have to wait and see, obviously, and you could think that I am just saying nonsense, but I'd like to know your thoughts. Do you think we're getting a Mandalorian GL? Do you think we're getting a raid with it? And do you think that the current era units are going to be required? Answers on a postcard, please. Make sure you hit that like button and subscribe before you go, and I will see you all in the very next video. Peace out, and may the Force be with you.